So this is the card that we're going to make using the Sheep Scene It set. Okay, so if you look on here, you've got all these beautiful elements that will make scenes. I'm using the one with the fence, but if you look on here, there's a very similar alternative, same layout of sheep, but different background. Okay, so put that to one side. So we're using a craft card which is 12 centimeters square. The black layer is 10 centimeters and the watercolor card is 9.5 centimeters. So I'm starting with the fence. As a general rule, when you're doing scenes, particularly if you're new to them, start farthest away, okay, and or I'm going to do both. Start from the largest element that you want in the scene and work out from there. So I've started at the back and I'll work down, but I've also stamped my largest element, which is the sheep and lamb, and I'm going to do that at the bottom. There we go. And then you can use this as a guide, so you can work out what you want to go where, whether you would, for instance, you wouldn't put that sheep next to that one because the sizing is wrong. Another good idea is to use a bit of copy paper or something first of all and just work it out, and you'll soon see whether it looks right or not. So basically, the further away something is, the smaller it's going to be. So that's your guide. If in any doubt, go out in the garden, have a look down the garden and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so there we go. Oh, one more thing. I've got my little grass there, and so I can I'm putting in another level here, which gives the impression that it is a bit further back. And there we are. Now I'm going to just use a Zig Millennium pen, basically a fine liner, and we can just put in any little bits that we want to. And to make it easier for colouring, I'm just going to bring this line down so that it appears like a path. And because that finishes doesn't go to the end of the card, what I'm doing is just putting in a few dots. You don't have to be able to draw to do this. Just put in a few dots, which lines it up, brings it to the edge, and it's far easier when you start colouring. So there's my starting point, and what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to swap that one over because that it takes a couple of minutes to dry, and I want to use Distress ink, and if I use it while the picture's still wet, the colour of the trees will bleed. I'll get a darker image. Okay, so this pad's quite dry, so I'm being quite heavy-handed with it. This is the beautiful blue sky that's outside as I'm stamping this, but it can be any colour you like. There are no clouds in the sky today. It's just beautiful blue, but you can put clouds in if you want to by dropping a couple of drops of water on there, leaving them for a few seconds, and then just patting them with a bit of kitchen towel, but that's the way I want it. Right, I'm now going to, so that was tumbled glass Distress ink. This one is peeled paint. And what I'm going to do now, I've got a little mark on there, I'll cover that in a minute, must have ink on my hands. So I'm just going to put lots of water on here, and I'm just going to put a wash on. Now this breaks it down, doesn't matter if it's not perfect, because we're going to add details over the top anyway. But so I'm just doing an area at a time, because I don't want it to dry and leave lots of lines. So I'm carrying on in one area, and each time I add more ink, I just go over the bit before. It's quite watery, so the watercolour card may buckle a little bit, but it won't matter because it will go flat when you stick it onto the card, and it goes flatter anyway as it dries. Okay, so I'm just getting this wash on, and what I would do with that little mark that I've got on there, I'd just stamp a little bit more grass over a bit further down the line when I'm ready to work on that area. But what I'm doing is just putting a little bit of green. Doesn't matter if I want to go over with a darker colour afterwards. So if I go over a bit of the fence, doesn't matter at all, because this is just a wash to give me an idea of where I want to colour, and immediately it looks a lot more manageable. Okay, if you do accidentally go over like so, just flood the area with clean water and pat it with a bit of kitchen towel, and the colour will come out. Allow it to dry, and then you can work over the top. Right, I'm putting that to one side because that will take a few minutes to dry, and I'm just carrying on with one that has dried. You can now change it as much as you want to. So what I'm doing is I'm just putting colour in, and if I use the clean colour and just go down, I can put little dots of colour in there. And even if I've done it one colour, I can still go back in and change it. And if I put colour like so, then I can still pull it through with my paintbrush. So we can put basically colour wherever we want it and just pull it down, and then that it's not all the same, it's not all the same colour. Okay, so just a bit of colour on there, and we just pull that down, and we'll carry on colouring. So here I've got my brown, again wet paintbrush. Now I've got two lots of water because I've used a lot of the green. That will be now a bit, the water will be green. So if I want something clear, I use a second, I use clean water. So I'm going over here with my grey to do the shape, and this is where it's important that your water's clean, because I'm just going to go in and merge those edges like so. Now if I'd done it with the green water, you'd have a green tinge on there. So you can use different coloured greys. That first one I used was grey tint. This is light grey. So I'll just do the, it's a bit subtle, you probably won't see it here, but they are different greys, and that will show up so that the lamb is slightly different to the mum. So going forward, I'm not going to colour the whole bit. I'll move forward and I'll stop for a minute and colour some of it off screen. But you get the idea. Just build up your picture. It's quite a nice quick one to do. So, and just put colour where you want it. Okay. And you can keep changing it if you wish. Do all the sheep grey. They're not right if they're absolutely pure white. And you've got elements on here like this that you can do grey. You can also put a bit of grey into the path to make it different from the fence. Right, I'm going to stop there for a moment or two just to allow that to dry, and then we'll do the finishing touches in a moment. Okay, so just the finishing touches now. This is completely dry, and just look at it and add more colour if you want to. So I'm just going to put a bit of yellow in there, a bit of yellow in here, and you can see it changes it straight away. I'll put a little bit of a darker grey in there, and if you want to add a bit more colour, you can always do something like use the Wink of Stella pens. So these are a fine nib, they're firm, so you can do really tiny bits. So we'll have a bush here with berries in it, and just add a little bit more colour to this card. Okay, and last but not least, we're going to just add a bit of texture to that grass. Just do those stones as well. And as I said, you can always sort of just add bits of extra colour where you want it. So I'm going to use the peeled paint again, and I'm going to use the grass stamp. And what I'm going to do is stamp, but use the second and third images as well. I'm going to be completely random where I go. I don't want to start dark. I don't want all the dark bits in one place, and it just builds up the texture here. As you can see, it gives a pattern to the card, and it doesn't matter if your base colour wasn't smooth, because you've got this texture on here. It's really quite an effective way of doing things. There we are. So quite happy with that. One finished card. Let me just move that out of the way. So version 1, and yeah, each one will be slightly different. The original and an alternative background, and use any of the backgrounds in there. So hopefully that gave you a good idea on the perspective that the smaller things are at the back and the larger at the front.